Good morning, everyone. No matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here at Christ Church. Please join me in the call to worship. For the wonder of the earth, the blessing of the space between us, the peace of God upon you and your people. The grace of God and harmony in praise. It is good when we dwell in unity together.
Good morning. So it's Indigenous Peoples Month. And to celebrate that, we thought it was worth pointing out that the land on which we worship belongs to the Munsee Lenape people. That land was taken from them unfairly a long time ago. But because we at Christ Church Summit are dedicated to openness and spiritual dialogue, we want to acknowledge both the tragedies of the past, but also the possibilities of the present, how we can remain gracious and morally curious when faced with the ambiguities of history. And also, we wanted to share with you the welcoming ceremony of the Munsee Lenape Nation, which I believe we have queued up.
Way hi yo, way oh, hey. Way oh, way hi yo, way hi yo, way oh, way oh. Way oh, way hi yo, way hi yo, way oh, hey oh. Way ah, way hi yo. Way hi yo, way oh, hey oh. Our first reading today is from Matthew chapter 4. Our reading today recalls a story of discipleship. Jesus was walking by the Sea of Galilee. Peter, Andrew, and some of the other disciples were mending their nets, getting ready to fish for the day. Jesus says to them in chapter 4, "Come follow me. I will make you fishers of other people." And the disciples followed after him. Amen.
I'd like to invite all the church mics up at this time. Please remain standing and greet one another with the peace of Christ. Good morning. May the peace of Christ be with each of you this day. Welcome to Christ Church. We're so glad that you're here, whether you're here in person or here with us online, we're grateful that you're here with us today to worship. And before we go to a time of announcements, I want to turn it over to Jeff Anderlinas.
Good morning. I came to Christ Church for the first time in 2019 when I was trying out churches, and I saw this church in New Jersey that had a jazz tradition. And I came to the church and I found I could call it a home. The congregation didn't always agree, didn't always come together from the same point of view, and they didn't attack each other either. If you know the Riverside Church, you know, of course, that's its tradition. I also saw they were a caring congregation because on one of my first visits, which was Christmas in 2019, they took up the Christmas plate and shared it with the less fortunate of the Summit community. I come from a multi-denominational tradition. My father was Catholic, my mother was Presbyterian. They raised us as disciples, and if you know what that means that we have communion every week. And I embrace the American Baptist and the United Church of Christ tradition that's here at Christ Church. My first wife was Buddhist. My current wife is Jewish and a Christian Scientist. We celebrate the Christian holidays. We celebrate the high Jewish holidays with our neighbors, and that's one of the things that's great about Christ Church is the diversity that's here. So I joined the church in 2020, fully expecting to take up all the responsibilities of a member, and then COVID came. When I think of how Christ Church has responded to COVID, I remember all the tumult that is caused in the American churches all around the country. But I think Christ Church has done it better than most. I think of the word ecclesia when I think of Christ Church in the ancient Greek, which literal translation is the called out ones, or in our case might be the called in ones. Excuse me. We conducted our business online. We shared great sermons and came to worship with each other in each other's home. Through every week, we had recordings from everybody's house. I know I did a recording from my dock. I did a recording from Martha's Vineyard. And Christ Church, reaching out through the new media, has successfully kept its flock together by embodying the best of the internet and in the early Christian church tradition. Some members will always participate via the internet. I know in my membership class, 3 of the 7 were basically out of state. There was no falling off of the richness of content during pandemic times in music or in the sermons, in my opinion, I'm sure in yours too, and it reached us in our homes when we needed it the most. As a member who is not from the Summit community, but as a commuter member, I see the possibilities continuing to grow. And now that we are coming back together as a greater congregation in person, I can only be more positive as the congregation continues to grow together.
Thank you, Jeff.
I just have one follow-up note on that. This is the season of the year when we ask people to make a pledge. If you're here today, you can grab a pledge card from one of the ushers in the back and fill it out today. If you're online in particular, we need you to just send in an email to us from mypledge@ccsnj, Christchurch Summit, New Jersey.org, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I have a couple of announcements, and then we'll open the floor. We are having an Advent workshop this year. It did not get into the bulletin yet, but it will be sent. There will be an email sent out this week. We are going to have it on December 4th, and that will be a day, an intergenerational day of crafts and the service projects and lunch together, and then Christmas caroling. So I hope you'll all come on December 4th for that. Also today, Reverend Roberto Foy is going to be leading us in an adult education program right after the service on food insecurity in New Jersey, and it's going to be in the conference room right off of Barnwell Hall. He's got a PowerPoint and everything. He's very well prepared, so I hope you'll stay for that. Are there other announcements this morning? Yes, Carolyn.
Good morning. Today is the last day of the Bridges Coat Drive. And on behalf of the Board of World Fellowship, I would like to thank you all for bringing in coats. We're very pleased with the result, and thank you for your generosity. It's also the last day for congregational input to the Three Kings gift. If you have not yet had a chance to suggest an organization that you think would be good for the Three Kings gift, look for me after church. Thanks.
Thank you, Carolyn. And now,
Good morning. I have two announcements today. The first one is Jane Grapel here today? No, okay. I'm a board member at the Connection here in Summit. Last night we celebrated our 100th anniversary, and the Connection is not just a place for swim classes. It's also, through its history, been very active in the social heart, the social justice heart of this community. And on December 5th, we will be hosting Heather McGee, who wrote The Sum of Us, at Summit High School. We invite you to come. It's a $25 suggested donation. There's more information on your bulletin. My second announcement is I had a meeting this week with Amy Jones from Family Promise. Prior to the pandemic, Christ Church was a host church for the families with the program, and they would come and sleep here on our host week. They will no longer be coming to sleep here at the church during our host week, but there are many ways that we can get involved, and some that I think will be very exciting to the members of the church, which is why I need a small committee to meet with me so we can come together and figure out what would be the best approach to support Family Promise during our upcoming host week. And for those of you that like to cook, there may be a little cooking involved too. That's all I have.
so if you are interested in helping with Family Promise in a whole new way, please see Anel after the service today. Annie.
Good morning. If you don't know me, my name's Annie Solorio. I'm the chair of the Music and Fine Arts Committee. And first of all, I just wanted to highlight an ongoing musical opportunity here at the church, and that is the group behind me, the Chancel Choir. We just want to remind everyone, and particularly remind anyone who might be new to the community, that if you are interested in singing with the choir, we'd absolutely love to hear from you. We rehearse on Wednesday nights from 7:30 to 9. So if that's an opportunity that you'd be interested in, it is a very fun time, I promise. Please see Mark. We'd love to hear from you. I also just wanted to highlight that the Music and Fine Arts Committee has a few activities planned. We're planning a Christmas cabaret for Sunday, December 11th. We might have an activity going on at the Advent Workshop. So if you're interested in any of those sorts of activities, Music and Fine Arts Committee would love to hear from you as well.
Thank you, Annie. I forgot to mention we do have a date for the Progressive Dinner. John Houston has offered to organize it this year. So we're going to have it on February the 4th, and we're very grateful to the Garveys for hosting the cocktails. So mark your calendars, more details to follow. Yes, Marilyn.
Hi, my name is Marilyn Devois, and I just wanted to ask anyone who has a room in their house that they could rent to see me at coffee hour. My husband and I have been renting a room to a senior citizen who is very close to getting a senior apartment here in Summit. But now we are moving out of our house into an apartment, and he needs a different room to rent. So please see me if you have a room to rent. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. Are there joys and concerns that you would share today? Yes, Maddie.
My daughter-in-law, Claudio, is in heart failure, and they're trying to figure out why in the next week. So just prayers for guidance for the doctors.
I'm sorry, this is your
Father-in-law,
Claudio? Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Justin.
I just wanted to share a joy. I seldom get to celebrate celebrations with my family due to the fact that I'm a performer and my sister is in the industry. She works, she's the head of a country club. And we are actually, for the first time in, I think, 10 years, getting to celebrate Thanksgiving today.
Wonderful.
So that's a joy.
Roberto?
Thank you. Don't mean to be Debbie Downer here, but holidays and in general, Christmas in particular is a hard time for many. People get depressed, the blues, especially in families that have lost loved ones, especially the first, second year. That would be the case with my family. We lost my mother-in-law in 2021. And so I ask that we prayerfully keep these families in mind, and may the joy of the season prevail.
Thank you, Roberto. Yes, Dean.
I'm not sure if this is a joy or a concern. Last week, my 21-year-old son was going through a real emotional crisis. He's in college in Goucher College in Maryland, and at the spur of the moment, I decided to drive down and stay and be with him. I have an electric car, and it usually takes me 3.5 hours to get to the college, but I had to charge, and then charge, and then charge. I had to charge 6 times because 4 of the charge stations were out of commission. It took me 21.5 hours, and I ended up sleeping in the car for part of it with 35-degree weather.
Wow.
I made it. I found my son was in better shape than I thought, and he was in a lot better shape after I left, so it was worth it. But be careful when you're charging your electric cars.
I'm grateful that your son is doing better, too. Yes, Ashley.
I have a joy and a prayer of concern. My joy is Tia's been working really hard all semester with a program called Girls on the Run. It works on self-esteem and empowerment. And they finished their season running a 5K. Tia ran her 5K with my brother, who I'm really grateful for, in 25 minutes. She was the first girl to cross the finish line yesterday.
Oh, congratulations, Tia.
She did a great job. And then my prayer of concern and heartache is for the families in Colorado in the shooting at the LGBTQ nightclub last night. And I think they said there were 5 individuals who died and 12 who are injured and receiving care. So pray for the victims and their families.
Thank you, Ashley. Susan?
Hi, I'm just asking for prayers for my husband Richard, who's having difficulty walking, has been for quite a while, and we're also waiting for some answers from the medical community as to what's going on, but just for patience and help with the day-to-day frustrations and joys that we're experiencing. Thank you.
All right. Prayers for Rick. Just want to share 2 joys. Rob, your mom told me, so I'm going to share with the congregation that Rob just won a very prestigious award that was awarded to 13 people out of 500 in Special Olympics. He just won this award for his sportsmanship and his cooperation and support of other athletes. So we celebrate with you. And we also celebrate the birth of Leela Dahlia Knight to Michelle and Alan this week. As we spend time in quiet, we're going to be hearing this morning from Justin, who's going to sing us into our prayer. Then I'll lead us in a spoken prayer, and then we'll sing the Lord's Prayer together. It's printed in your bulletin. Beloved God, teach us to open our shuttered hearts and our portioned and boarded up spirits with bold generosity and with courageous hospitality. Estranged and alienated so often and from so much, sustain us in making circles of welcome out of gatherings of strangers. Around the table of wonder, meet us in abundance, drawing out our stories and showing us how to weave together community with steadfast love. When we are cast out and wandering, may we find welcome and compassion that calls us back into accountable relationship, into the ways of healing, into the ways of peace. As the holidays approach, we are mindful of all those who are grieving the deaths of loved ones. Those empty chairs at our tables are so painful to see. Teach us to care for one another with forbearance, forgiveness, gratitude, and rejoicing. We pray this day for all in need of healing. We are especially in prayer today for Claudio, who is having heart failure, for Rick having difficulty walking, and waiting for test results. We pray also for families and loved ones of those in the Colorado shooting at the LGBTQ nightclub. Surround them with love and comfort in this very, very difficult time, and help us to find ways to change the culture in our country so that gun violence is a thing of the past. Oh God, we are grateful this morning that Dean's son is doing so much better and that he was able to go and be with him. And we celebrate with Alan and Michelle on the arrival of their daughter, Leela. We celebrate with Rob on his Special Olympics award, and on Tia for completing the 5K in record time. And with Justin, who is able to celebrate with his family for the first time in 10 years. May we welcome you, beloved, as we welcome enemies, strangers, and exiles into a life of transforming love. We sing now the prayer that we have been taught. It's now time for our morning offering. Let us give with glad and generous hearts.
I believe in the sun. I believe in the sun, even when it's not shining. I believe in the sun. I believe in the sun, even when it's not shining. I believe in love.
It's okay. That's good. The children may go to Sunday school at this time. If I could take off my hat as my daytime job as senior minister and put on my hat for my future job as Leo Caravano's agent. Just to let you know, he will be starring as Tiny Tim this year in Chatham as the Christmas Carol is played, and if you want to go see that, let me tell you, I'll be there. One other thing, it's beautiful to see all our kids. Sometimes I think what our congregation would actually look like if our kids could go to church who are in sports but can't, because we can only get them now up to about second grade, and then after that they're gone until they're in 6th or 7th grade, but wonderful to see them here today. Our second reading this morning comes from the Gospel of John. Jesus says to the disciples, "I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. And by this others will know that you're my disciples, by the way that you love." You know, about this time of year, most of us get a song in our head that we can't get rid of that easily. I'll be home for Christmas. And sometimes out of nowhere, you'll get this aching, longing for home, like Geraldine Page in that great movie, Trip to Bountiful. She gets back to her childhood home in South Texas. And the guy that she's with, who brought her up there, just standing there, and she says, you know, to him, even though this house is now dilapidated and falling down, and it's literally, you know, in ruins, she says to him, you know, I half expect my parents to come out on the front porch and welcome me home. I think all of us would like to be welcomed home. You may have seen the videos earlier this week of the Ukrainian soldiers that were returning to Kherson for the first time in over a year. It was an emotional reunion as the soldiers made their way into the city. But one thing that was actually surprising in the video that I watched, some of the people that were in the city recognized one of the soldiers as their nephew. And the minute they did, his aunts came running down the street, hugging his neck and saying to him over and over, "You're alive, you're alive." It was very moving to watch, and he was trying to be strong for all of them like soldiers can be, but he was having a hard time holding back his tears as his aunts kept kissing him on the face over and over. And you know, sometimes it's important to remember how grounded we actually are with our people. It takes a threat to remind us about that. But we all want to come home, especially for the holidays. As we gather this year, we pause this day to remember those who won't be with us. I'm thinking especially of those who have lost a spouse in the past year or two. There's that haunting line from one of Joni Mitchell's songs about the raw absence that we feel in the beginning of our grief. It says, the bed's too big, the frying pan's too wide. Sometimes, even when you're surrounded by other people, you can just feel so alone. This person that helped you literally grow up, you have so many memories together, so much gratitude for the way that they helped you rise to your higher self, the way that they were patient with you when you know no one else would be patient, and even you wouldn't be patient with yourself. And over time, they become the anchors in our life the spiritual markers that make us feel really real. And when they die, a little bit of our own history starts rolling up behind us, because so much of what we did with them. And you have this moment. Sometimes you'd be gathered with people around the table, even when all your people are together, they're sharing time together, and you have this wave of sadness that just sweeps over you with an unbelievable power. And for just a moment, you absorb this wave of loneliness in a crowd. You can shudder to yourself about it. It's so good to be with your people, but man, it's not the same as before. And that's tough. And then I think of so many of you who have lost your parents or your grandparents this year, and you go through the holidays, and you get to one of the traditions that you used to have, that your folks or your grandparents used to do. This year it's not being done. And right there in the midst of what is a great celebration with family and friends, and you're delighted to be with them, but you have this deep moment where you realize that they're gone. It just hits you emotionally for the first time. And you realize they're not coming back. And it's not going to be as good without them. You know, your life is evolving before you. And so is your place in the life cycle. New people are being born around you. Children are growing up. Young people are dating new folks. They're bringing them home. Future that's coming into being is pulling you forward towards your new home as much, sometimes more than your home of origin. Subconsciously, it's just a reflective season. And it's what we do in the downtime when we're preparing for the holidays or we're cleaning up after people leave. You're changing. You're so different from the person that you were in high school, so different from the person that you were when you graduated from college. You have different needs. And the place in your life today is actually a lot different than you thought it was going to be when you tried to imagine what it would be like when you got to be your age back when you were in college. You know, Professor Dan Gilbert at Harvard done study after study to show that, we're really bad at predicting what we're going to need in the future and what we will actually be like. We routinely think that when we get to be 60, we're going to be pretty much the same as we were at 30, only older. But that's way off the mark. We're almost always surprised when we actually get to that later stage, say 60, at how complex and difficult it can be to actually negotiate these places. We think we're going to have everything worked out by then. But you get to that place in your life and you realize there's actually a whole other set of complex things to figure out, way more complicated than you ever would have guessed. You become responsible for so many more people, and your happiness is contingent upon their fulfillment. We give our kids a college year to go abroad at the end of their time in college to do some exploration about the wider world for sure, but also to kind of figure out what's important in their own life as they transition to being adults and living on their own. And you may be secretly wishing you could take a semester abroad right now and sort through everything that's going on in your life now that your children are starting to become independent and moving out on their own. What's happening next for you? And what are the disappointments that you wish you could have transcended by now, but they plague you anyway? And how about your secret hopes? And how would you spend your time? If you could afford to, what is it that you would be doing in this next immediate phase of your life? Subconsciously, our souls are thirsty, and they need to be nourished. And it comes out in our lives first, sadness. And that sadness that you feel is very normal. Spiritually, you're alive. And by the way, more aware than you really realize. Jesus teaches us that that spiritual longing is filled when we open ourselves to love, to making connections in new, different ways as we evolve through life. I give you a new commandment, says Jesus, that you love one another. And in Matthew, Jesus says, love God with all your heart and your soul, and love your neighbor as though you would love yourself, in the same way you would love yourself. The teaching is not hard to understand. It's just hard to practice. And we have to come back to it over and over with different resolve. Perhaps you saw that short film that features two grown men sitting on a park bench. One of them's about 70, the other's 40. It's a father and son. Son in his late 40s, father in his late 70s, and the dad looks like he might be suffering a little bit from Alzheimer's. He's got that kind of blank look on his face. They're sitting on a park bench, kind of quiet and bored, the way that we do sometimes when we're with our families physically, but we really wish we were doing our to-do list, or we wish we were doing something more exciting than what we're doing right now. The older man finally says out of the silence to his son, "What is that?" And the son says, "It's a bird." The older man says, "What is that?" And the son says louder this time, "Dad, it's a bird." The older man says, "What is that?" And the younger man screeches at him impatiently, "Dad, it's a sparrow, okay?" The older man walks away, and then he returns with a book, and he asks the young man to read out loud. It's an entry from his diary from many years ago. And it says this: "Today, I took my 2-year-old son to the park. We sat on the bench. 21 times, he asked me, 'What is that?' Each and every time I hugged him and I said, 'It's a bird.'" And they sit there on the bench for just a minute. The camera kind of pans out behind them. And after a bit, you see the son put his head on his father's shoulders and give him a hug. Now, why is it we're like that? I don't know, but we are. Love is one of those things we have to come back to again and again and again. Sometimes it seems that the hardest to break out of the box is to be genuinely compassionate with our own people in our birth family, for reasons that are as complex in our family as they are in our internal lives, right? And perhaps for that reason, it's St. Paul suggested that the church really needs to be a place of kind of as a catalyst where we become a spiritual family of families, kind of spiritual surrogate mentor as parents, as siblings to one another. That this community is a place where we learn and relearn what it means to love and to nourish other people. We all become stronger in our souls. This is the place that we intentionally open ourselves to becoming more profoundly connected with integrity, and we lift one another up and celebrate our joys and comfort one another in sorrow. What's your soul telling you this year? How is it that you need to love in this season of your life? I want to invite you to a time of silence as we reflect and remember the guiding lights that have inspired us in the past, so that we can become aware of where we're at right now in the present. And after a time of reflection, I'm going to ask that you come forward and light a candle of love, a candle of hope, to honor what's come before you and to invoke your gratitude about how connected you've been, and to open yourself to love. How can you nourish those around you spiritually, emotionally? How can you make them stronger, deeper, your people? And by the way, welcome home, to the new home that's emerging and evolving all around you as God pulls you towards the fullness that God wants for you in your life. May you reflect the light this season. Amen.
each year at Christ Church, as we approach the holidays, we celebrate a ritual to remind us of those whom we've loved, who've gone on before us, who've transitioned from this world into the next one, and are no longer with us for the holidays. Mark's going to play some music, and I invite you to come forward to take a taper off the table, light it, and then light one of the votives, and then to take the votive and place it in the windowsill around the sanctuary so that we can be reminded that we are surrounded by the communion of saints.
And now as you go from this place, may God bless you and keep you. May God make his face to shine upon you. May God lift up her countenance upon you and be gracious unto you. And may God grant you and your people peace. Amen.